Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be here. In this webinar format, you can see and hear me and my screen, but I cannot see or hear you. Following the webinar today, all registrants will be sent a recording and a slide deck for your reference and use. Immediately after this webinar, you'll be directed to a survey link. We appreciate your feedback as it helps us know what we're doing well and what needs improvement for future webinars. If you have any questions throughout today's webinar, please place them in the Q&A box on the toolbar, and I will address them at the end of the presentation. So my name is April Myerscough. I'm the Public Programs Coordinator with Florida Humanities and the point person for all of your book festival grant needs. Today I'm going to cover information about our organization and some definitions of the humanities. Then we will go through the tenets of the grant and finish up with how to create a successful application and, of course, answer any questions you might have. So if you are new to our organization or unfamiliar with our work, Florida Humanities was established in 1973 as the state affiliate of the National Endowment for the Humanities. Our mission is to preserve, promote, and share the history, literature, culture, and personal stories that offer Floridians a better understanding of themselves, their communities, and their state. So what are the humanities? It's a big, complicated definition, but our definition is that it is the process of pursuing an understanding of our shared human experience. Through the exploration of the humanities, we learn how to think creatively and critically, to reason, and to ask questions. So here are some of the disciplines situated within the humanities. What you see on screen is not a comprehensive list, but of course the most relevant fields that everyone might be interested in today are literature and poetry. These disciplines can be used as the focus of discussions at your book festival or a jumping off point about other topics at your festival. However, you may be thinking that beyond book festivals being a celebration of literature, the humanities might not turn up. However, by facilitating conversations about literature through author panels and discussions, those discussions can be between authors or between authors and readers, you are helping conduct and share the humanities. These discussions can foster meaningful connections with all genres of literature, whether it is fiction or nonfiction, fantasy or mystery, or even graphic novels and comics. So now I'm going to move on to discussing the grant itself. I did want to advise everyone attending today that there's a very limited amount of funding available for the 2023 fiscal year, and the application process is highly competitive. The funding opportunity may be closed for this year if funding is completely distributed, so it is never too early to reach out and inquire about applying, even if your festival is later this year, especially with limited funding available. So book festival grants award up to $10,000 to support the execution of public book festivals across the state that celebrate the joy of reading, facilitate interactions between authors and readers, and encourage an appreciation of Florida's literary landscape. Festivals may occur over one day or multiple days, can be held virtually, in person, or hybrid, which is a mixture of in-person and virtual elements of your festival. And your festival may include authors from or residing in Florida or residing in or from outside the state. Florida Humanities defines book festivals as open to the public events that offer opportunities to interact and discuss literature with authors and illustrators who have meaningfully contributed to Florida's literary landscape, including panels, discussions, signings, and hands-on activities. Events should be free or have a minimal attendance fee. Eligible festivals can appeal to all ages and demographics. That includes age-specific festivals for young readers that are very common. Festivals can also celebrate and host discussions about one genre or multiple genre, including both fiction and nonfiction subgenres. So some eligible events within a book festival may include author and illustrator talks and signings, author and illustrator panels and discussions, writing workshops, and keynote addresses. What I just shared with you is not a comprehensive list by any means, but some things that the evaluation team will be looking for in your application. So this is a snapshot of the festivals that we have funded for the calendar year for 2023 thus far. Since the launch of this funding opportunity about 1 year ago in summer 2022. You can visit our website and our events calendar to learn more about each of the events. As you can see, it's a pretty wide variety of events, and we have funded both local and statewide events, large scale and smaller scale events, focusing on a whole area of the statewide, or of course, just one community or city. And then festivals we have funded have happened over one day or multiple days. So there's no set due date for this application process, but applications are due no later than 4 months prior to the first day of the festival. This is not a flexible deadline, as applicants need time to complete the application, and our evaluation team needs time to both read and review the application. And then if you're funded, it does take some extra time to develop contracts, sign contracts, submit all the necessary paperwork. We want to make sure our grantees have enough time to do all of that. However, we do encourage you to reach out about applying far in advance of the due date for your festival to provide as much time to work on the application. And because funding is limited, it may run out before the end of the fiscal year. Applicants are notified within 30 days of submission of their funding status. Funded organizations receive 90% of their approved funding at the start of the project, and then the remaining 10% on a reimbursement basis contingent upon receipt and approval of the final report. Contract periods vary due to festival lengths and dates, but on average, the contract is 3 months prior to the festival to 30 days after your last grant-funded activity. So who is eligible to apply? All Florida-based organizations constituted for nonprofit purposes, including colleges and universities, are eligible to apply. All organizations must have a SAM or Unique Entity ID number to apply. If you need to figure out what your organization's is, or if you need to obtain one, we do have instructions available on the Florida Humanities online application portal. Individuals, for-profit businesses and institutions, and first-year festivals without an established partner, which I'll talk about in just a moment, are not eligible to apply for this funding opportunity. So like I was saying, all first-year festivals must be connected to, have a partnership with, or be a part of an established sponsoring organization that can demonstrate significant experience hosting large-scale literary or related events for the public. For example, these partners might be a library or a library system, a literary or literacy foundation, a cultural council, or a college or university. What I just shared is not a comprehensive list by any means of suggested partners for first-year festivals. This requirement is incredibly important, and first-year festivals without a connection to, partnership with, or being hosted as a part of an established sponsoring organization will not be considered for funding. So ineligible events for funding include, as stated before, first-year festivals that are not connected to, part of, or partnered with an established sponsoring organizations, events whose sole purpose is to fundraise or raise money, events that celebrate one author or cultural figure's literary achievements, music, art, and cultural festivals where literature is not the main purpose or featured in events, and writing workshop or author panels and conferences that require a registration fee for the public to attend. So if your organization is funded, there are a few requirements from Florida Humanities to be considered within good standing during your process. We ask that you submit some mandatory forms, including a contract, event listing forms, and a final report 30 days after your last event. We also ask our grantees to be as communicative as possible with us and let us know if any changes occur or questions arise during your contract period. And lastly, we ask that grantees include the Florida Humanities logo on all promotional materials, as well as your festival's webpage or your organization's website. So now I'm going to speak about the application itself and some application tips and tricks. If you have questions about anything I've shared thus far, please place them in the Q&A box to be addressed at the end of the presentation. So the majority of the application consists of 8 narrative questions. All of these fields require longer, multi-paragraph responses that fully address all areas of the question with information about the festival and/or your sponsoring organization. These questions cover the history and mission of the festival and the sponsoring organization, the festival's connection to the humanities, an overview of the festival's target audience and attendance fees, your organization's promotional plans leading up to the festival vendors and exhibitors, community partners helping make the festival a success, including nonprofit and commercial organizations, and lastly, how your organization will evaluate the success of the festival. So as with all responses, those that are well organized, clear, and concise are considered the most successful. For the narrative question about your festival's connection to the humanities, successful responses should provide a good amount of detail and inform the evaluators about particular panels, discussions, and activities that connect to the humanities. Most importantly, the response should focus on the proposed festival instead of past festival or related events. The text you see here on screen, which might be a little small, but you'll be getting the slide deck after the presentation, provides a broad overview about how the festival connects to the humanities through author panels and discussions, and then provides 3 examples of panels that utilize humanities topics directly. You can see here in the first and final paragraph of this response, they are comprehensive about how the festival connects to the humanities, and then 3 individual panels are detailed discussing youth immigration, historical fiction, and storytelling, which have connections to the humanities. So again, responses, of course, must be well organized and clear. The response should share information, as you could see, the festival overview question about the format of the event, the venues, expected and prior attendance if this is not a first-year event, and details about what kind of events will happen during the festival. A summarized timeline of all proposed activities and their implementation is required as a supplementary document, but a schedule overview should be included in your response underneath Festival Overview. All of the details shared in the narrative section should match details that you share in your supplementary documents to make sure there are no discrepancies. And again, focusing on this festival's plans and desired outcomes is more important than sharing details about events that have already happened in the past. So unsuccessful narrative responses are those that are too short and do not provide enough information for the evaluators, as you could see in these short responses on the right here. The response does not properly describe the festival's connection to literature and the humanities, and it is difficult to determine important details, or details might vary from response to response and give an unclear picture, especially if your details vary from your narrative responses to your budget form to your supplementary documents. Lastly, responses that do not focus on the proposed festival, but rather past events or unrelated information are considered unsuccessful. So here's some final narrative tips we can share to help you craft a successful narrative response. We recommend that you avoid first-person language and more colloquial language in your narrative responses. Focus on what your organization would like to achieve with your proposed festival. Again, not what has happened at past events or festivals, other than, of course, in your history section. That would be an appropriate place to share the history of your festival. Lastly, more details are always better than less, particularly in the budgetary section, which I'll discuss next. A sample application to view these narrative questions in more detail is available on our Book Festival Grant webpage. I recommend you take a look at that to see what the evaluators are looking for in an application. So after the narrative questions, there are a few required documents. Each of these forms are separate submissions, as seen in the screenshot on the right here. All of these fields that you see on the screen can support multi-page documents in one upload. The first is a budget form, which I'll detail in a few slides. We will also need a complete event schedule with details about the panel, discussions, keynotes, and a list of your participating authors. Brief biographies of confirmed participating authors is also required, and these biographies should share some of the author's published works and how they will be contributing or participating in the festival, such as the panels and discussions they will be a part of. Next, we will need some examples of promotional materials. These can be flyers, posters, social media posts, press releases, scripts from radio and TV spots from previous or current festivals or related events. Again, this submission can be multiple pages in one, so you can gather all your promotional materials into one PDF form and submit that. Lastly, we will need a sample evaluation tool. This tool showcases how you will measure the outcomes of the festival and ensure that your goals are being met. Again, all of these documents are required. You won't be able to submit an application or have it be considered complete if any of these supplementary documents are missing. So we also have space for 3 supplementary documents. These are optional and not required for your application to be considered complete. As well, these submissions also accommodate multiple pages in one upload field. These supplemental documents can be letters of support from community partners, previous festival or event advertisements, examples of past large-scale events hosted by your organizations, or anything similar that you'd like to upload. These fields are for you to use to enhance your application. It won't count against you if you don't end up using them. So I'm now going to go into detail about the allowable budget line items and how to complete the required budget form. Florida Humanities will provide funding for a variety of line items. Again, applicants can request up to $10,000 in funding. We ask that you request an amount that reflects your organization's need for the festival and does not underestimate or overestimate your needs. We recognize that budgets fluctuate as the festival moves forward, so the one you submit in your application, of course, is provisional. The evaluation team will analyze all budget forms submitted and prefer that costs are weighted towards line items that directly contribute towards connections between authors and readers, so the line items that are for honoraria and travel and per diem. Florida Humanities provides funding for author honoraria, travel and per diem, technology costs, venue and equipment rental, publicity and promotion, and other. And other is exactly what it means. It is any other cost that directly contributes to the development and execution of the festival. While nebulous, all line items that are described as other must be detailed. Ineligible line items for funding include general operating support, refreshments and/or food for festival attendees, supplies for supplementary activities at the festival, musical and entertainment act honoraria and fees, and the production and distribution of items to sell at the festival. As well, funding cannot be used to purchase tickets for attendees, nor can it be re-awarded as scholarships or money for fundraising purposes. The budget form is a downloadable Word document located within the online application. There are gray fields on each of the line items, as you can see in this photo. All fields can be typed in and sums are totaled automatically here at the bottom. And when you open up the form, the detail section has more space than is shown, and so you can type as many extra pages that are added as you need. So on the right-hand side of the screen is an example of a completed budget table on the top of the form. The top pink box here are the funds you are requesting from Florida Humanities for each line item. So you see honoraria, travel, per diem and lodging, technology, etc. Again, any totals included in the gray boxes are summed automatically here in the bottom box. The bottom table is your estimated cost share, split up to both in-kind and cash. And I'll explain cost share in a little bit more detail in the next few slides. Again, totals that you submit in the boxes sum automatically, and then the 2 numbers between in-kind and cash should sum automatically here at the bottom. Something you can also account for in your application is 15% of your total requests in indirect costs for your cost share. You don't need to detail those. You can read more about indirect cost share in the very helpful definition box here on the budget form. Successful budgets ask for exact, detailed funds for specific costs as opposed to more general and nebulous line items. Make sure your requested funds do not exceed $10,000 and that you match at least one-to-one cost share in your request. So the budget detail can be found below the tables that you saw in the previous slide. It's all one document. Also, sharing budget details is required. We require details for both requested funds and cost share. Again, the space seen on the original document is not the only space you have, and more pages add automatically if you need them. Budget detail describes every cost recorded on the table in depth. It is clearly organized between your requested funds and cost share, which is then delineated between cash or in-kind. Most importantly, budget details what I call is show the math of how each line item will be accrued, so show how much each line item adds up to the total. So for example, at the top, you can see that each line item is detailed and matches what would be requested in the table exactly. The honoraria total is shown at the top here under requested funds. So this applicant is requesting $6,000. And then you can see right below that the author Jane Doe is being paid $2,500 to participate in a youth fiction immigration panel, which would be Worlds Away and at Home. And that panel would be hypothetically described in your narrative section. It also includes, which is a little bit beyond, also includes the author of what they have written that is relevant to the panel that they're participating in. Making connections between the narrative and budget form is very important as it paints a complete picture of what funding is needed and how it will be expended. So now that I have mentioned cost share several times throughout the presentation, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail because I know it can be confusing. Cost share or match are the costs of a project, program, or event that are not paid by Florida Humanities through a grant or what is considered requested funds, but instead uses the resources within your organization or from outside your organization. A minimum of a one-to-one match of your awarded amount is required if you're funded. For example, if your organization is awarded $8,500, you will be required to provide at least $8,500 in match. Cost share can be accrued through cash, in-kind services and goods, or a combination. Cash cost share are line items that an organization pays for directly out of pocket, and in-kind goods and services are those that are either donated or have an invisible dollar amount like staff and volunteer time. Cost share can be accounted for example, through any costs not covered by Florida Humanities, so leftover travel, honoraria that is not covered by your grant, staff and volunteer hours, which can make up the bulk of your cost share and often does in our applicants, refreshments for authors and exhibitors, other grants and monetary support from nonprofits, corporate sponsors, commercial sponsors, individuals, etc., among other costs. We have a more comprehensive list about how you can accrue cost share in the grant guidelines, but again, even that in itself is not a comprehensive list because each festival is unique and each organization is unique, and you might have costs that aren't considered widely used. Like the grant funds, cost share within your application is an estimated total. As we know, budgets fluctuate and change as the event grows and grows closer and occurs. You still should show that you can meet the minimum match, at least one-to-one. So as you can see in this example, the cost share is equally detailed to the budget request a few slides that I showed you before. Each line item, again, shows the math, including how each total was accrued. And you can see in the honoraria section here, you have a list of authors, which panel they're presenting in, and how those totals, how you get to the $8,000 is shown if you look at the honoraria section. So you can see in this top one, Don Smith is being paid $1,500 to participate in the Taking Care of the Earth panel. And then he's the author of this book here that indicates his relevance to participating on this panel. This may not be shown in your narrative section for cost share because these are events that may be outside the scope of humanities but are still happening at your festival. However, you should include all confirmed authors and panelists and individual panels and discussions and events inside your schedule of events to help the evaluation team get a whole picture of the festival that's occurring, not just the part of the festival that you are requesting funding for. Also in the budget detail, you should delineate if cost share is being accrued through cash or in-kind services. As you can see here, the honorary is being paid for out of pocket for cash. But then if you look down here at venue and equipment rental, this is being donated or what is considered in kind. More details are always best, even if your budget is multiple pages long. A detailed budget helps evaluators confidently make a funding decision, as some applicants may only receive partial funding for specific line items. So now I'm going to delve into how you can apply for funding. If you have any questions, please place them in the Q&A box at the bottom, which is the two chat boxes next to each other, and I will address any questions that you might have at the end of the presentation. So the first step is to analyze the festival that you have hosted or are going to host. Determine what elements would be a good match for funding and how you address humanities topics in certain events within your festival. All potential applicants must contact Florida Humanities staff to discuss the festival and your potential eligibility for funding. Applications cannot be accessed without this code, which you can only get by having a conversation with a staff member about your festival. And I can say that a conversation with a staff member is not just calling and asking for a code or emailing and asking for a code. You do need to have some sort of back and forth conversation, whether it be over Zoom or the telephone, so the Florida Humanities staff can get a good picture to see if your festival might be a good fit for funding. Please be advised that these conversations do not preclude being funded and often last about 20 to 25 minutes. So if you are approved to move forward with an application, you can apply online through our online application portal. If you have questions or get stuck when you're working on your application, we are happy to help. All applications must be submitted at least 4 months before the first event of the festival. Once you have submitted your application, we ask that you wait for a decision, as our evaluation team requires at least 30 days from your submission date to evaluate the application, and then decisions are sent through the online application portal within that 30-day window. If you're working with another organization for the festival, you can collaborate within the portal system on the application, kind of like a Google Doc or Google Drive account. Individual instructions will be sent to eligible applicants again after you have a conversation with a Florida Humanities staff member. So the online application portal can be accessed through the grant homepage. If you need to create an account, instructions are available on the right-hand side of the portal login in this big gray box. If you have an account already, you can, of course, use your existing credentials. However, we cannot reset information for you, most commonly the password. But if you have forgotten your password, you can simply click the Forgot Your Password button underneath the login screen. So once you log on, you are not going to see the application immediately. To enter the access code, which you can only get by having a conversation with staff members, you type the code up into this Enter Access Code bar here, and then, of course, click Enter Code here. So once you've entered that code, your screen will look different. It'll give you another option of a grant to apply for. You can preview the application by clicking the button on the bottom left here with the eye that says Preview. And then you can start an application by clicking this blue top button here that says Apply. This application can be saved and returned to later, but make sure you click the Save button, as it does not save automatically, and we would hate for you to lose all your work. So I've shared a lot of information about this funding opportunity with you today, and if you're sitting there and thinking, this might not be right for us and our organization at this time, Not to worry, we have plenty of other opportunities currently open and available and opportunities that will be opening later on this year. I recommend visiting the website on screen, floridahumanities.org/funding-opportunities to check them all out and see the whole landscape of what we have available. If you'd like to be alerted when new funding opportunities, applications, and ways to participate in Florida Humanities events and funding, recommend, if you've not already, signing up for our newsletter, which is floridahumanities.org/sign-up. This is also the first place that we announce new funding opportunities, upcoming webinars, public events that you can attend as grantees or potential grantees that might be of interest to you. So that is it from me. If you would like to reach out to set up a conversation about your festival, you can reach out at the contact information you see on your screen. I would recommend, of course, reaching out sooner rather than later, as again, our funding is incredibly limited for our 2023 fiscal year. We have already funded a number of festivals. If you have questions, please place them in the Q&A box. Now is the time to ask anything that you might have, because I can hopefully answer all of them that you might have. You can also, if you need to, you can put them in the chat box as well. I can say about our festivals, again, that we have funded a variety of types of festivals, both in person and some mostly in person with some virtual elements this past year. Large scale events that last an entire month, and then some events that last just one day or one weekend. We've funded community scale events, large statewide events with 70 plus authors. So it really runs the gamut, and it just depends on what you feel your organization has the capacity to host, along with what you feel your community needs in a book festival. So I'm going to leave the question box open for just a few more minutes. If there are no questions, again, I'm happy to answer anything that might arise as you think about the festival or you're developing your festival. My contact information is on the screen. Email is the best way to get a hold of me as we work hybrid, so I'm not always able to answer calls from my office phone, and it'll take me a couple of days to respond to your telephone message. All right, well, if there are no questions, which is great, it means I covered all the information you might need. I just wanted to thank you again for your time today. This webinar was recorded and will be shared in full with all attendees after the session, along with the slide deck of what you saw today. If you have questions, of course, please reach out again sooner rather than later. Email is the best way to get in contact with me as we work hybrid, and it may take me several days to return your phone messages. Thank you again for your time and attention. I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Thank you so much.